Do you think the Australian government now is suppressing COVID adverse reactions and deaths?
Without a doubt, yes.
They know?
Yes. They can't not know. They're either incredibly stupid.
The excess death number are there.
Yeah. The Australian Bureau of Statistics, its own figures now show around about 26,000 deaths, excess deaths for 2022. And no one is asking why.
Nothing.
We've been asking why.
Wow.
Now, that to me shows that they don't care. They'd rather have this ongoing deaths continue. So you can tell I'm getting a bit angry about this because they're killing people. They're killing tens of thousands of people. But worse than that, Efrat, they are saying they don't know. So if you're a doctor, if you're a health official, if you're a bureaucrat, your duty is to find out what is killing these 26,000 plus people.
Welcome to another episode of You're the Voice. I'm Efrat Fenigson, recording from Brisbane, Australia, at the Podcast Boss Studios. I am delighted to meet a very special person, Senator Malcolm Roberts. Thank you for joining me, Senator.
You're welcome, Efrat. Thank you for the invitation. It's good to be here.
I'm very excited to be with you. It's really great. So let's start with a short intro of you that I put together. Let's see if I'm accurate. So Senator Roberts is an Australian politician under the One Nation Party in Queensland and a member of the Australian Senate since 2016.
With a small gap in the middle.
Okay.
I can explain that later.
You stopped and you came back again?
No, I was found to have dual citizenship.
Oh.
Even though I had renounced properly, it wasn't done technically correctly by the time of nomination. So I was booted out along with about 6 or 7 others.
And then you came back?
Then I came back at the next election.
Okay.
So people must have liked what I did.
I guess so. I guess so. Well, I know why. He has a background in engineering, mining, business and economics. He's a climate realist. That's how I call you. Climate realist.
I go by the data.
You go by the data. You do. Challenging the mainstream climate science and exposing lies in this field. Unlike most politicians these days, Senator Roberts does not shy away from any topic, so it seems. He's speaking about and acting on public health and COVID, immigration, finance, economics, housing, sexual education for children, and more. During the past 3 years, I noticed your work because you were one of those rare politicians who genuinely care about humanity and your fellow citizens. And you were brave enough to speak out in your country about the atrocities, corruptions, and lies enforced on us by our governments and the ruling global elite class. In the Twitter space we had last week, I was pleased to hear you call out the global elite banking families who control our world, which is quite unusual. I spent the past few weeks in Melbourne before I came here, where I met with many people from the Awaken community there. And when I told them that I'm interviewing you, they were all aware of your work and they were very proud.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, they were like, oh, you're going to see Senator Roberts. They felt proud. Although they're Melbournians, they still felt like, you're one of them. So, and also our mutual friend, Professor Ian Brighthope.
Oh, wonderful.
He asked to say that you're a true statesman.
Thank you.
So they know you and they've been following you, even there in Victoria. And I saw you all the way back from Israel and I've been following. And I think that's what you need to know, that a lot of people around the world are following. I'm sure you're getting it from all the different social media channels, but your work is shown, just like people like Christine Anderson, for example, in Germany, and Senator Alex Antic, and many other people in the U.S. that I've been following, because there are almost hardly any politicians that are doing work that really serves the public these days. I feel like most politicians are serving themselves or other people that they're working for or taking orders from. And they forgot about their constituents. They forgot about why they're doing what they're doing. They forgot that they're supposed to be public servants. Where is the public?
Well, in my first speech in the Senate in September 2016, I started with the words, as a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia. Queensland's my state that I represent in the federal parliament. As a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia. And the Labor Party opposite me laughed, some of them, and some of the Liberals sniggered.
They don't live like that.
No, who pays my wages?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
people.
The people.
Who elects me? The people. Who are I supposed to listen to and represent them as their voice in Parliament? The people.
Yes.
So that's the core to what we do. I've every speech more than 3 minutes in length, I start with those words, as a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia, or something like that. I vary it around.
And you see, that's supposed to be the norm, and it's not. And the fact that you are like that, and that's who you are and what you do, is unusual. And I think it's an indication to the state of humanity today, where we are. The roles have shifted. Instead of the public servant serving the public, something else is happening there.
And yet you said you'd be interested in learning what I meant by that. We have the moral power, the political power, and we also have the consumer powers. The consumer power we have because we can decide whether or not we buy media and who we buy it from. We can just switch off the TV. We can switch off the newspapers.
When you say we, it's important for me to say the people. We the people.
Yes. So
not we the politicians.
No. We the people can switch off the TV, can stop paying subscriptions to people that are controlling the media. We have the moral power because we are in charge of our country. We the people, because I don't know how Israel's formed, but in Australia we have a constitution that is the only constitution in the world that the people voted for.
Really?
Yes. Oh. And it's the only, I only found out 2 years ago that we're the only constitution in which the people voted for it. And the only people who can change our constitution is through a majority of the people.
Wow.
So we're in charge. And people think that we're a monarchy. So we are a monarchy, but we're a constitutional monarchy. And in a constitutional monarchy, the monarch only has reserved powers. And the monarch serves the constitution. Her role or his role is laid out in the Constitution. We are a republic already, effectively, because we're run by a rule of law, which is the Constitution, and we elect the government. So what's happened in this country is the same that's happened in America, Canada, Britain, New Zealand. I'm guessing Israel, but I don't know.
No, Israel does not have a constitution.
No, what I was getting to was that...
But it's the same as Western democracies, yes.
Right, it is. Yes. It is a democracy. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. The thing about a democracy is that the people rule, but the people have stopped ruling because we've stopped holding politicians accountable. Instead, the media portrays people in different lights. So it's been distorted, it's been warped. So what we've got to do is wake up people commercially so that they realize they have the power, morally so that they start doing what they're supposed to do. And a democracy can only thrive when the people are in charge, because the number one thing for the advancement of human progress is freedom.
Yes.
Because your ideas, you can share them with me. That's the engine room of all human progress. That's sharing of ideas. And
that's why when I do my talk is called A World of Freedom versus Control, because it's all about freedom or control. We live in a world that is completely polarized, and there's duality. There's good and bad.
We're going to get on.
Black and white, evil and good, right? And there's control and freedom. And it's all about freedom, as you said, and sovereignty. And we the people just forgot about that. And we accept everything that is being thrown at us as if it's normal, should be like that. We don't question, we accept.
I'm so happy to hear that, because I've literally stood up in Parliament and in public speeches saying this right versus left is bullshit.
Yes.
It's to control people.
Yes.
So that there's so much...
But how can you say that when you're a politician?
Well,
are you not on the right or left part of the map,
it's
the
nonsense.
political map?
It's nonsense. Some people, even in Parliament, are on the left wing, what they think is the left wing morally or socially, and on the right wing economically, and the reverse. So what I've said all along, you might be surprised to hear this, but it's not left versus right. It's control versus freedom.
Amazing.
And I've been saying that and made that argument ever since I got into Parliament. What I realized when I first thought of that, I was reading a book by Gary Allen, who's a historian in California. You familiar with it? None Dare Call It Conspiracy.
No.
Very, very thin book, wonderful book, very simply written. And he was reading this, and I thought, gosh, this left versus right, because he wasn't pushing left versus right.
Yes.
But I thought, Hitler is portrayed as a right-wing extremist. But his party was the Nationalist Socialist Party.
Which is left.
He's a left. So I thought, this is all bullshit. This is done by the globalists to confuse us, to separate us, and to get people to not think, but to just align with the side.
Yeah.
And that's what they've done. They've taken the thinking out of being a human. They've taken the thinking out of being a democratic person. And we basically just follow now. Well, some of us, some people do. But.
Correct. Not everyone, not you. So, Senator, as a free spirit that you are, why politics? Why did you go into politics?
We had a famous professor here in this country who was retired, and he was doing a wonderful job exposing the climate fraud.
With great pleasure, I'd like to introduce my sponsors. They help me fulfill my mission of spreading truth, freedom, and sovereignty. You're the Voice is brought to you by Trezor, the original Bitcoin hardware wallet company pioneering the development of self-custody for crypto assets since 2013, empowering individuals with an open-source device, enabling beginners and experts to easily and securely hold their coins. I find my Trezor super easy to use and recommend it to my friends and family. Enjoy my 5% discount on Trezor products by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code Efrat. Next up is Bitcoin Nashville. If you're like me, sick of the globalists and central banks robbing you blind through excessive money printing, you need to be at Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville. This July, the largest Bitcoin conference in the world will shed light on monetary freedom with a glimmer of hope among a darkening reality of centralized power and control. Top speakers and companies will gather in Nashville to take part in building a new reality. I'll be there too, speaking and interviewing. Head over to my link in the notes for a 10% discount using the code BTCIL. And finally, BTC Prague, the biggest, most influential Bitcoin event in Europe, coming up on June 13th with 100 speakers on 4 stages, 100 Bitcoin companies presenting at the expo, and 10,000 like-minded Bitcoiners and freedom lovers from all around the world. I'm excited to attend for the first time as a speaker. I'll be speaking about CBDCs, interviewing other speakers, learning about Bitcoin, and meeting the best and brightest in the industry. The event runs for 3 days with a rich program from pitching contests to panels, presentations, and parties. I'd love to meet you in Prague. Use my code for a 10% discount.
Bob said to me one day, "This is the biggest scam perpetrated on humanity." And I said, "Bob, it's not even close." And so he said, "What's bigger?" And I said, "The money scam."
Yes.
The control of it. But I said, "That's not the biggest. There's something far bigger and more dangerous than the money scam, and that's the anti-human scam."
Yes.
Because they're teaching little kids, I start getting teary when little kids in school from 3 years onwards are taught that humans are greedy, rapacious, uncaring, unkind, irresponsible, just don't give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
And that is no way to introduce someone into the best species on the planet.
That is the worst.
Yeah. So what they're doing is stifling. What they're doing is stifling billions of people and crueling their lives. We've got people running around committing suicide in their 15, 16, 17 because they think the world is going to end in a few years because of them. Right throughout history, the battle between control and freedom exists within each of us. It's going on inside you.
Correct.
Freedom is shining stronger than control. But when we raise our children, we learn that we try to control. So,
yes.
So it's in a relationship.
Yes.
It's in families, and I think what divides protection, because you have to have protection. Like you've got a son who's now 14. There have been times, especially when he was less conscious, when he was younger, where you had to exert physical force to stop him running out in the street.
Yes.
If your force was to grab his arm with punishment in mind, then that's a harmful intent.
Yes.
But if your grasp was to bring him in to protect him, then that's a loving.
Yes.
Okay, so you're trying to keep him free. So we also have freedom versus control in society. We have freedom versus control in governments. We have freedom versus control between nations, trying to control each other. And I think what it goes back to is people who control are insecure.
Yes.
Very insecure.
Insecure, I would add to it also lack self-love.
Exactly. That's why they're insecure.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going against the universe, because the universe, everything is free.
Yes.
And I don't mean no expense.
Free
I mean
will.
it's free to go.
Yes.
So when you start interfering with that, you're fighting the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a miserable existence to try and control.
Yes.
But it takes a while to work that out.
And it's like that, as you said, on the individual level, and then it grows to the collective level of nations, of communities, cities, you name it. We see it in Israel, right? Now we have war, and it's almost transparent to the people that they perpetuate the never-ending cycle of violence and hatred towards another group.
Mm-hmm.
And the powers that be are doing a magnificent job in keeping that in existence in Israel. And people don't see that not only that they have it in their lives, that battle between freedom and control, they also have it as a collective. And they're constantly looking for who's the next enemy that I should now hate or be violent towards. And they don't get that the path to resolving that starts with the individual. If you don't do work to bring peace to yourself, you can't do any peace with anyone around you.
Exactly. And because it does start, and that's where I started by saying there's control versus freedom within each of us. But right throughout history, humans have tried to make their lives easier.
Yes.
That's not laziness. That's incredibly intelligent. Humans can think, and we always focus on what we need. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about universal human needs, not superficial strategies for achieving those needs. But, for example, I need an easier life.
Yes.
It's natural in a child just a few years of age, natural in a 92-year-old person. If I can spend less time doing the dishes, I've got more time doing stuff I enjoy or that's fun or that's productive. So we want to make life easier. So we can do that in many ways. I can do that by trying to dominate another human and get him to work for me. That's a slave. And I'm not justifying slavery. Slavery is actually a very low productivity. It destroys productivity in the society. So slavery is out. But we've used horses, we've used oxen, we've used various other animals as our energy. Mm-hmm. And what we've done in the last 170 years, and less than that, 140 years, is developed hydrocarbons. And hydrocarbons, coal, oil, and natural gas are just miracles. We have got slaves in our house that we turn on with a switch. We've got slaves in a car that we push petrol into, and that's it. And that has changed human life. It's increased our lifespan. It's increased our ease. It's increased our ability to travel, our choices, it's given us choices in work, so I don't have to work in my little valley under a lord who's going to exploit me and control me. I can move to another valley and say to go to hell. I could take a job somewhere else. So it's given us healthier, safer, longer lives. Yeah, and that is now what they're trying to stop. That's why. So I entered politics because I'm aware just what hydrocarbon fuels did: coal, oil, and natural gas. And it's been remarkable. It's been a miracle. We were scratching around in the dirt until about 170 years ago. The Industrial Revolution came and technology came, science came, and then we started a middle class. Because up until the Industrial Revolution and the development of science, we scratched around in the dirt. The lord of the manor, he gave us a little bit of dirt to scratch a living out of. We fed our kids, and the majority of the food we gave to him, and he sold and made a lot more money. Mm-hmm. That was feudalism. Mm-hmm. With the Industrial Revolution and the benefit of machines and hydrocarbon fuels, we started becoming more wealthy, and we started producing things more cheaply. So we had the birth of the middle class.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, the people in control lost control. And what's happening now is that they want us
trying
back
to
in the bottle.
regain that control.
Right. So the other thing that happened was before the Industrial Revolution, and one of the causes of the Industrial Revolution was the development of science. Until science came along, which was very objective and logical and data-driven, highly objective, the person with the biggest army, the person with the biggest wallet, the biggest economic power, the most property, or the strongest religion, they told you what to do. Mm-hmm. Science came along and said, no, we'll go with the data and we'll go with the logical argument, what's objective. And that liberated humans. So one of the things I got onto, having come from the coal industry, I knew the benefits. Everything in this room, everything is due to coal, because it's either made of steel or it's made using steel. Mm-hmm. The food is planted with mechanical planters that are made of steel. Mm-hmm. The food is harvested with harvesters that are made of steel. Every bit of steel needs coal originally in it. So then it's transported, it's processed, it's kept in a refrigerator that's all got steel in it, or made from steel, everything. So when I was working in the mines, I started off as a coal miner at the face to get good experience. And then eventually I became a mine manager. The only thing I got upset with miners is that if they'd say, I'm just a miner. And I said, don't say just, because what you're doing is you're earning export income for the country. You're developing the steel. You're developing the lights on at night. We didn't have lights until coal and gas.
Wow.
Or we had whale oil. So I heard this scam, this fraud of climate change.
When was that?
It first came to my serious attention about 2006. I just spent 12 months overseas turning around a mine in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And I came back and it was all the rage. And I started inquiring and I thought, this is rubbish. And then I thought, but I'll have a look at it. And so I looked at the science, because I'm an engineer. I implement science. So I've got a scientific mind. And a scientist is defined as someone who follows the scientific method, not someone with a qualification. So anyway, I started exploring it and I realized it was crap. And then I thought, who's little old me to say this is crap? But I studied it more, and I found more other people who were awake as well. And I also learned from my university studies, from my technical college studies, from working to get my statutory qualifications to manage mines. Mm-hmm. I understood carbon dioxide. And I understood it cannot create warmth. You cannot create warmth with carbon dioxide, which is what the story is. So I thought, this is crap. Then I started researching what was driving it. And I went down the rabbit warren that said, this is the United Nations. And I saw
IPCC,
very strong. He created climate fraud. Mm-hmm. He actually created it for control. Then I went, well, what's driving the UN? And that's where I found out about the major globalist bankers and those few families who control the banks. Mm-hmm. And then it was about the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and so on.
And what led you then to start to take that to the political arena? You found that's the most effective way to make a difference or to change
No,
things?
I jumped into it accidentally, Efrat. I guess politics is not just for politicians in Parliament. I didn't understand that at the time, but I was speaking at rallies against the carbon dioxide tax. I was holding politicians accountable, which is a citizen's job.
Yes.
And it must happen.
Yes.
So I was holding them accountable, getting in their face sometimes, not violently. And I realized most of them were ignorant, completely ignorant, yes, because they're so damn busy. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them entered politics for the right reasons.
Or some of them are just not very intelligent as well.
I'd say that. They're stupid, ignorant, or gutless.
Or gutless, yes.
Yes, and that's the majority of them, stupid, ignorant, or gutless. So anyway, I realized that I had to take part in that campaign to try and educate these people. I naively thought that if I give them the facts, they'll change their view.
Yeah.
No.
It's not enough.
So I went to the next step, which was I'll give you the facts and show that the reality, no, that's not
enough.
I'll give you the next step, the motives and the corruption driving it.
Not interested in listening to that.
They are interested, but they quickly run away because it means a battle in Parliament. Yeah. So what I was doing was going around the country talking about it, and Pauline Hanson heard me. She was the founder and leader of One Nation Party. She asked me to go on a forum with her, and then one thing led to another, and she asked me to stand up in Parliament. So I put my name in, and I fluked it. I was very, very lucky to get in. It was only that the previous government called a double dissolution and dissolved every house, every seat in the parliament. So I got in because the quota was smaller. But the second time around, I got in on a full quota.
Mm-hmm. And I heard that there are thousands of politicians in Australia. The political structure is, there are many houses, and in every state you have hundreds of politicians. And so in the whole country, the whole continent, you have thousands of politicians.
Yep.
We don't need so many, I want to say.
You know, society does need rules. I mean, but quite often the rules are set like the road rules.
Yes.
They're set for benefit of everyone, because you reduce the variation. When you reduce the variation and you improve the consistency, you get more efficiency, you get more safety. So that's the basis of law. Laws are necessary. But the worst place to make laws is in a central parliament, a national parliament. That's the worst. The only things we should be dealing with in national parliament are foreign affairs, defence, maybe currency, issuing currency, maybe communications these days. Not to censor, but just to the communication apparatus.
I would doubt currency, I think, should be detached from state, but that's also another topic.
In theory, probably the best form of currency would be locally developed currency. And if I like your currency, I'll use your currency, rather than legislated by government. But let's accept currency just for now. Mm-hmm. There are very few things other than that. Mm-hmm. And our Constitution followed, in some ways, many things from America. And we were a very good amalgamation of Britain and America. And our Constitution was set up as a federation of states. Mm-hmm. So the states came together, formed a federal government.
Yes.
And that federal government had limited powers. The Americans did the same.
Yes.
Because the Americans looked at Europe and saw central government, central government, central government, central bank, central bank, central bank, privately owned, controlling the government.
Yes.
So they didn't want central government, but they recognized they had to have a little bit of it. So they formed a structure of a federation, and most of the services from government were done by the state governments. And in America, they went further, and a lot of the services were done by the local government. In this country, we did the state governments because our country is so low in population, mm-hmm. so sparsely populated. And the state governments had most of the power. For example, education, hospitals, should be environment, several others. And then it becomes very difficult. The Americans realized also another thing. It becomes very difficult then for a foreign power to take over a country through the government.
Yes.
Because they have to infect 6 states and a federal government, and you can't do that. And so when you've got competitive federalism in our country, if one state does a marvelous job, people move to that state, mm-hmm. so the other states have to improve as well. Mm-hmm. So that's so we've actually got a marketplace in governance, yes. which is phenomenal.
Yes, it's
you
great.
Think about that.
Yes.
So, but bit by bit over the years, the central government has taken more and more power, and mm-hmm. it's done 2 things. One is it's destroyed the competitive federalism, so the states don't have to compete. It's destroyed accountability, because the states, when something goes wrong, say it's the federal government's fault, and the federal government say it's the state government's fault. And you've also got duplication, because there's not one school that's run by the federal government, but there are 4,000 bureaucrats in Canberra in the Department of Education.
Wow.
And if the World Health Organization or the national curriculum is a way for the United Nations to destroy children because they have a central curriculum. They
bring it down to Canberra and off you go.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the globalists get in.
Got it.
Central government. That's why it's easy for them in Europe. It would have been harder in America and would have been harder in Australia, but over the last 80 years in Australia, we've become more centralized.
I want to ask, how is it possible to take back this power from the federal government? You need to fire all these bureaucrats. But how does the Constitution say anything about that?
No, it doesn't. But Efrat, it's simple, but it's difficult. The simplicity is the people have to take charge again. The difficulty is that the people have we've had it too easy, and we've fallen asleep, yes. and we're not holding the politicians accountable. Yes. So when I say we the people should be holding politicians accountable, we have the ultimate with a vote.
Yes.
But what's happened is the media is controlled by the globalists. and the globalists control both the main parties. People think there's opposition, but there's no opposition in this country. There's limited opposition because both the main parties have almost identical policies.
Mm-hmm.
So people think that the Labor Party pushed most of the climate fraud.
Mm-hmm.
They're wrong. Every major policy, every major legislation to do with the climate and with energy was introduced by the so-called conservatives, the liberals. The Labor Party, when it comes in, ramps it up and entrenches it. Every single major piece of legislation. The most destructive prime minister we have ever had was a liberal who was known as Honest Johnny, and he was supporting states' rights and the Constitution and property rights. He destroyed all of them.
Wow.
And then 6 years after he got booted from politics, after implementing all of the destructions of our energy system, 6 years later, he said, on the topic of climate science, I'm agnostic. He didn't have the science.
I'm agnostic. It's another way of saying
I haven't got the science.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it comes back to the people, but we've got to first of all wake up the people. That's why my job is about not insulting people, but telling the truth.
Yes.
Because it's very, very important. Because I'm not just working for Queensland. I'm working for Australia, and I'm also working for the world.
You are.
And so are you.
Well, yeah, I try. It's happening that more and more people like me, the simple people, just take the responsibility and decide to be the voice.
Mm.
And it's so important. People just don't understand how important it is to continue doing that.
Why do you say simple people? I'm not criticizing you. I agree with you, but I'd like to know why.
Because I don't see myself as anything special.
Right.
I'm just one more person that sees the world for what it is, completely used and abused. And I want to live a good life, and I want my son to have a good life. It's all very simple. And I also want people to stop being victims in their own lives and start being sovereign and free.
Right.
And for that, they have to move their asses out of their sofas and stop watching Netflix all day and start listening to the inconvenient truths.
Right.
And it's simple because I live a simple life. I'm a simple person. I'm just taking responsibility, and I'm not being stopped by fear.
Right. And if you look at the Japanese manufacturing miracle, the key to that was simplicity.
Mm.
The key to modern manufacturing is making things simple.
Yeah.
And so the word simple is beautiful.
Yeah.
But it also comes into another form. My son, okay, he's very bright. He did first year university. We told him, my wife and I have both been to the top schools in the world.
Yeah.
All right. But my best education was working as a coalface miner. Okay, that's just the truth.
Yes.
So when I went to the University of Chicago, which is one of the top 3 business schools in the world, they've got more Nobel Prize winners for economics and finance than any other college in the world, anyone. They didn't tell me where money is made. They didn't tell me that it's created out of thin air. They didn't tell me. I don't think the professors knew.
No.
So anyway, well, we're talking about simplicity. So we said to them, both our kids, we said to them, do not go to university unless you need a piece of paper like a doctor's qualification or accounting or engineering. Don't go there because they corrupt your mind, especially the last 40 years or so. It's really insidious. My wife recently read of a study in America where the Americans who are woke have been through university and they can't think. So universities these days teach you what to think, not how to think.
Yes.
So my son went to first year, and he had always did first year, and he wanted to study aviation.
Mm-hmm.
He'd already had his pilot's license. He studied aviation, and he realized at the end of first year, this is not for him. The only reason he wanted a degree was because Americans require a degree over there for pilots.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, no, I'll stop this. So he went out and he started doing the basics of engineering. And then he got a job in an American company as an intern, and he was so good that they hired him. And then when COVID struck, he came down here, and then he decided, I think I will go back to engineering and do engineering. And so he did first year engineering, and he did really well. Then they brought in the injection mandate. And this is the point of the story. And he said, to hell with your injection mandate. I mean, he went to one of the top universities for engineering in this country. He was being educated by a trans person who was so confused and telling him to get the injections because, you know, they'll be in place for 10 years. They were out of the place in 3 months.
Yeah.
So he said, to hell with this, went out and got a job in construction, operating equipment.
Well done.
And he turned up and he said, do you wear masks around here? I was going to say something starting with F, but bugger off. What about injections? Got to be injected? Bugger off.
Great.
The simple people.
Exactly.
They're focused. They haven't had their minds corrupted by a university.
I'm with you. I see during the last 3-4 years, that's the circle that I come from, all the tech industry, the very highly educated people. The more educated they are, the more indoctrinated they are.
Yes.
It's very hard. In my community, the tech industry in Israel and the startup scene, people were heavily indoctrinated, very similar to the universities in the United States, for example, or the tech companies in the United States. And I was like your son, like, bugger off with your jabs. I'm not taking it. I'm not doing it. You're not going to make me. And I'm a chief marketing officer in a global company, and all the 250 employees are all taking the jabs, are all very happy about it. And I'm the only one standing up saying, sorry, no, not playing that game. And I stayed there. They appreciated me and they accepted me with my values and my principles. And I was lucky to be in a place where it was not mandatory.
I don't think you would have taken it if it was mandatory.
No, of course, I would have left.
No.
They knew.
Same
I told
here.
them. I told them that the day I came and I said, the day you're going to ask me for papers, for a green pass to show, you know, because it could be a PCR test, right? It doesn't have to be an injection. You can do a PCR test and get a green pass every few days or every week. There was stupid things like that during that time. I said, you're not going to ask me for my papers. I'm not going to show you any papers.
Gee, that's a powerful statement in
Never.
Israel. It's a powerful statement in
you know,
Israel.
my grandparents had to show papers in Europe in the 40s.
That's what I meant. That's a very powerful statement in Israel.
Because it is the same. I told them, this is a workplace. Our relationship is of an employee and an employer. I come here to do my work the best possible way I can so that your company is doing well. And that's where the relationship ends. You do not have the right to tell me what to do with my body. It has nothing to do, and with my private life. It has nothing to do with you. If I choose to be religious, to dress up a certain way, to put stuff in my body or not, this is none of your business. You're my employer. You're not me.
So long as you're not negatively affecting another person's health.
Exactly. And I wasn't.
No. What I mean there, I want to be very, very, jump right in there. If you're wearing something that's bouncing and hitting people,
sure,
that's a health hazard. But if you're not taking an injection, that's not a health hazard.
No.
Because what they've done with this is just straight bullshit.
Especially when we're talking about a product that was in the market for a few months and no one knows what the repercussions of this product are.
Oh, but it's safe and effective.
We all know it's not. Okay. We talked about your awakening journey, but you said it started in 2006. And the first things you were exposed to were climate
fraud,
climate crisis, global warming, hoax.
No, don't use their language. It's not a climate crisis.
It's
very important.
I always say it as it's bullshit, of course.
So I
there is
say
no
it's
emergency.
Climate fraud. Because I won't use their language.
So share your stand or some of your actions on that topic.
Well, I wrote to politicians, holding them accountable. I wrote to the CSIRO, the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, is the government's advisory body on climate. So I held them accountable with letters saying, give me your report. They couldn't provide anything. Give me the evidence. And when I say evidence, science, the objectivity that comes from science is having hard data, observations, measurements, objective measurements. But more than that, it's data within a framework that says you do this, you have this effect. This causes this. So you have hard data that proves cause and effect. That's science. So that's what I was looking for, and no one could provide it. So that was from the CSIRO. I did freedom of information requests.
Yes.
Wrote letters to them, had discussions with them. Same with the Bureau of Meteorology, supposedly providing the data. It is an important detail. the temperatures in Australia in the 1880s and 1890s were warmer than today.
Mm-hmm.
Then they dropped dramatically to 1910.
Mm-hmm.
That was the coldest period. Then they started increasing gradually, all natural, until 1930s, 40s. Then they were on a 40-year decrease until 1976. Then we had a sudden jump up, entirely natural, the Great Pacific Climate Shift. Around about that time, they were saying the world is going to end pretty soon due to catastrophic global freezing due to, wait for it, hydrocarbon fuels. So they were after a tax, and a little bit of more warmth, all natural, took them to 1980. So the Bureau of Meteorology, if you look at the graph from 1880 to 1890, today's temperatures are lower.
Yes.
But if you stop the graph at 1910, which is when they released their measurements from,
mm-hmm.
it shows an upward trend.
Mm-hmm.
But most of that upward trend was up until the 1930s before massive industrialization.
Mm-hmm.
Since 1995, roughly, it's been flat. It was so slightly increasing. It depends which year you start and finish. So the Bureau of Meteorology has cooked the figures using what they call as homogenization. It's a bullshit thing. So what they do is, if some of the temperatures, Rutherglen in Victoria is actually on a decrease.
Mm-hmm.
What they've done is they've warmed the latest temperatures and cooled the previous temperatures and transformed a decreasing temperature into an increasing temperature.
What do you mean they just changed the data?
Yes. Yes.
Tinkering with the data.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bureau of Meteorology is guilty of that. So I held them accountable. Then when I got into Parliament, I'm not going to brag with what I'm about to say, but
yes,
it's important to make a point. Professor Tim Ball, I think he was the world's best climatologist. He was a Canadian. He died. He said, I'm the only politician anywhere in the world, any Congress, any Parliament, who has held the government science agency accountable on climate. Now, I'm not saying that to say, give me a medal. I'm saying that because that's the way politics works.
Yeah.
They don't dare question the experts. And I'll give you a story. There was a wonderful senator from North Queensland. He was in the Liberal Party, but he was a skeptic. And I was holding the minister accountable for science and the chief scientist. And the senator came and sat down next to me as I was finishing my question. And he said, "That's what I love about having you in the Senate. They give you bullshit and you bash it right back at them." So because politicians are afraid of being seen as stupid or ignorant, so they won't ask challenging questions. So not one major politician anywhere in the country, they've asked them in Senate estimates hearings, that kind of thing, but no one has pursued the CSIRO or NOAA in America or NASA's GIS in America or the UK Met Office anywhere. Mm-hmm. No one. So they've never been put under scrutiny. So they've got away with their lies. It's a really simple way the globalists use it. They just spread the bullshit, bury people in bullshit, and that's it. So the CSIRO, I've held them accountable in Senate estimates. I've also held them accountable when I first got into Senate. The very first thing I did was write to the CSIRO and say, I want a presentation and I want the logical scientific points. And it took a while. It took me several weeks to chase them down because they didn't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And then they got into the into a 2.5-hour session with me in Sydney Airport. They put on a proper presentation. And in that, we let them talk. They didn't want to record it.
Okay.
But we did. And we told them we were.
Okay.
Okay, so they agreed. They were very apprehensive about it, but we recorded it. So then during that session, I asked them, so what is there about the last 2,000 years that says there's a pending danger? And they said, we've never said danger. And I said, well, who has said there's a danger from climate? And they said, you better ask the minister that. Mm-hmm. In other words, it's a political construct. Mm-hmm. So the second 2.5 hours we had with these people, and remember, this has never been done before, we challenged them on some of their temperature measurements. Mm-hmm. And they looked at me, and I was about this far away from the team leader of the climate science group for this country. And he said, today's temperatures are not unprecedented. Mm-hmm. There's no global warming. Mm-hmm. This is after 40 years of research into climate, supposedly. We asked them for any evidence they wanted to give us. They gave us one paper on carbon dioxide and one paper on temperatures. Mm-hmm. The paper on temperatures, the author himself said was not robust for the 20th century.
Wow.
We pointed this out. They didn't even know it.
So how do you break that narrative?
Well, with the COVID narrative, the data is there. But the politicians from both sides of both major parties don't want it exposed. With the climate, both parties don't want it exposed. So that's very, very hard. We just got to keep going until we get up like a snowball.
So it has to come from the bottom. It has to come from the people.
Right. But with climate science, the people have been indoctrinated with bullshit. David Pocock is a senator. He cited science the other day by saying, I've got a list here of so many professors who are afraid of what's going to happen in climate. No data at all, but that's science to David Pocock. That is science to a lot of people out there. The mainstream media, the mouthpiece media says, a majority of scientists say that. Majority of scientists is bullshit. So what we've got to do is eventually get this out. I had a very good offsider who helped me in the Galileo movement when we were exposing this before I got into the Senate. He said to me, just looked at me one day and said, we're not going to get anywhere till it hurts the people. What you're seeing now in this country, I don't know how often you come here, Efrat, but people are starting to hurt because of the energy policies driven by the climate policies, all lies, by Chris Bowen, the energy minister, by the previous energy minister, all lies. And people are now starting to get upset about the transmission lines. See, with a coal-fired power station, you only need one transmission line.
Yes. With
solar and wind that are scattered over many, many different regions of the country, you need lots of power lines. Those power lines are tearing up national parks. They're tearing up farming. They're tearing up communities. And they're saying, go to hell. We don't want them. So now people are starting to kick up a fuss. Wind turbines are hugely damaging on the environment. Solar panels are hugely damaging on the environment. But the biggest component of all is the huge increase in cost. And what's going to really hit soon is we're going to have outages, blackouts. So the answer to your question is not until the people won't stand up until they're really paying the price.
Yeah. I was in, that may encourage you, I was in Daylesford in New Year's, and there was a parade, and with the locals, the farmers, the truckers, whoever was in the Daylesford area. And they had one truck with a massive sign saying F net zero. And
wow.
Yes, that was in Daylesford, in Victoria. So I was very happy to see that. It was very cool.
It's coming. And what we're doing now.
They're feeling it. I'm sure they're feeling the pressure.
But many people don't realize where it's coming from. The message is starting to get through that it is net zero. What we're trying to do now is connect UN, World Economic Forum to net zero, because that's where the policies have come from. That's the root source. I have a very good friend. He's 85 years of age. He's been a very strong freedom fighter for probably 64 years. He recently won an award. He was recognized. He formed a political party to try and fight for freedom. His writing goes all over the world. He's a very, very good man, a very strong man.
What's his name?
I won't tell you his name because I'm about to embarrass him.
Okay.
This is unlike him. So I got into the Senate.
Yes.
And he knew about Agenda 21. Mm-hmm. He called me up. He never gives advice because he doesn't take advice. He always relies upon his own research. And he said, just don't say Agenda 21.
Don't say it in Parliament.
Yeah.
Why?
Because he was afraid I'd be denigrated and ridiculed, and that would destroy my effectiveness on the climate. My first speech.
You said it.
We need to, on Oz exit, get out of the UN. And I think I mentioned Agenda 21. I certainly mentioned it a lot. Mm-hmm. I have enormous respect for that man. Mm-hmm. But here's a strong man, highly regarded by many, many people around the world, saying, watch what you say.
So he's afraid to speak out. Afraid of the consequences.
He's afraid of the consequences in terms of destroying credibility. But what I did was jump right in, and then the media would call me and say, you're basically, they'd call me out in public, so you're basically that idiot that believes this is an attempt at global control. Mm-hmm. I said, yes, next question. And they realized they couldn't intimidate me into backing down, so they give up on it. Great. It's so easy if you just tell the truth.
Yes. Yes, the other day, someone sent me an article from April 2020, just when COVID started, a month after COVID started, where I collected different technologies coming out of Israel during the beginning of COVID, like health technologies and different things like that. I wasn't awake to the lie of COVID back then. And I added to that list, it's a list I made of different technologies coming out of Israel. And one of them was this kiosk for PCR tests that was made by my parents' factory. And here I am looking at it now. It looks to me like the biggest joke.
Yeah.
It's like PCR tests are a lie. These kiosks were made to get people to feel more separate and more afraid so that, they wouldn't infect someone because they're a danger to society. Here I am experiencing all those lies on myself during the years to come. And when I wrote it, I didn't know anything. So I wrote it and someone just put it and sent it to me and said, "Your controlled opposition, look what you put on April 2020. And I looked back and I said, I did. I wrote that. I did write this because it was before I even saw the lies. I didn't deny it. I didn't try to make another lie on top of it. I said the truth. Yes, I wrote it. I didn't know anything back then. And I learned and I knew how manipulated I was to think that that would be good. Now I think that that was funny. That was a hoax. And, sometimes just saying the truth is so liberating. It's so easy. And they've got nothing else on me.
No.
Because if I'd continue lying or invent something else and try to justify it or whatever, it would just go on and on and on. And it just stopped there when I said, yes, I did. I wrote that.
Well, it's the same with me, because if I make a mistake, I say I've just made a mistake. Or if I don't know something, I say I don't know it, but here's my view so far.
Yeah.
And people think, well, how can you embarrass him? You can't.
Exactly.
Because you can't catch him out that way if you just tell the truth. But we all make our mistakes, because in the early days of COVID, when it arrived in this country, we saw the videos from Italy, the videos from China, the videos from France, the videos from Spain, the videos from Greece.
It's very convincing.
Thousands of people laid low in coffins in the street, And then 4 years later, you see one of the sheets under the coffin lift out and get a smoke and put the sheet back down. So we were lied to.
We were lied to. We were manipulated.
I've not had the COVID injections, and I won't. There's no way I will. I've spoken out against them right from the start because of the informed consent, bodily autonomy. That's sacrosanct to me. There's one thing to do with censoring what you say, but to force something into your body, that's just inhuman.
That's next
to
level.
Force you to take this so that you can keep your job, so that your child can eat.
That's horrible.
That is just that's Nazi stuff.
That's evil.
So I remember saying early on, we had this one-day session in the Parliament. Everyone came down, wore masks, and all this kind of stuff. All part of that's what helped me realize the masks were a form of control to keep you afraid.
Yes.
Remind you of this evil bogey. So anyway, we had to assume, because we're responsible, even though I'm not in the government, we're responsible ultimately for what happens in the country by holding the government accountable. So I said in Parliament, we don't have the data. We can see what's happening overseas. Therefore, we give the government a blank check. Get on with the job. It's like a war. If you're being invaded, you give the government all the power it needs and just get on with it. But I said very soon after, we are wanting the data. We're wanting a plan. We will hold you accountable. Have a look at Taiwan. They're managing really well. And have a look at ivermectin and promising results in Melbourne University. And they did none of that. So then within 3 months, I started writing to them saying, where's your data? I got bullshit back, complete crap. And then in Senate estimates in 2021 in March, the chief medical officer gave me the evidence. I wanted to know how strong this virus was, and I wanted to know how strong it was in absolute terms, but also in relative to past flus. And the diagram he gave me was a very, very good diagram. It showed that COVID was less severe than some past flus. And so here it is, it's out in the open. When you think about that, not only is it less severe than some past flus, it's only striking the elderly. So that meant for the vast majority of Australians, it was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But they locked up the country. And then you started learning about other things. And then we started putting it all together. And that's why I said we had an inquiry.
Yes.
March 2022, we ran that as our own inquiry, got experts from all over the world. And then we did it again, the second one in 2022 in August 2022.
What was the purpose of the inquiry?
Put the facts out in the open because the government wouldn't. I wrote to the Premier of my state. I wrote to the Prime Minister. They were just giving us lies.
So to document basically other opinions and other facts and data and show it to the public.
Our country is a civilized country. This is the first time they withdrew a proven, safe, effective, affordable, accessible treatment.
Medicine,
ivermectin.
Mm-hmm.
They withdrew it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that to people.
Made it illegal.
And then this is the first time they made a lethal, untested, unproven drug mandatory.
Yes.
So that you could feed your children.
Unheard of. You're taking me to COVID, so I'm going to continue with my questions on COVID for you. Do you think the Australian government now is suppressing COVID adverse reactions and deaths?
Without a doubt, yes.
They know?
Yes. They can't not know. They're either incredibly stupid.
The excess death number are there.
Yeah. The Australian Bureau of Statistics is our statistical agency. Yes. It shows, its own figures now show around about 26,000 deaths, excess deaths for 2022. And no one is asking why.
Nothing.
We've been asking why.
Wow.
Now that to me shows that they don't care. They'd rather have this ongoing deaths continue. So they've done several things. Doctors are supposed to report adverse effects.
Yes.
Doctors are supposed to report deaths from the injections. The AHPRA, Australian Health Practitioners Regulatory Agency, is deliberately suppressing doctors, putting the fear of doctors so they don't report.
Mm-hmm.
They're making it difficult to report because it takes quite a bit of time and doctors are busy. So it's highly underreported. We know that from America as well. They've done studies. Some people say as little as 1% of adverse events get reported.
In the VERS database, yes.
At the most, it's 10%.
Mm-hmm.
What we've had is, and doctors have a legal duty in this country to put down the cause of death on the death certificate. The doctor does the death certificate. So that we've had very few reports that are accurate because the doctors are afraid. And some of them have lost their registration for nothing. And then other doctors then become afraid of losing their livelihood. So we've had a minimal reporting, but of those that have been reported, more than 1,000 deaths due to the injections. That has been fine-tuned down to 14.
Oh, my God.
14. And there's no objective criteria that they assess it against. So 14 deaths. 14 is enough to stop the injections. But 1,060 or whatever it's up to now. And then you look at the reporting. No one is doing this. And then you look at the excess deaths. Dr. Peter Parry and Dr. Peter Rhodes wrote a paper recently. Australia is either the only country or one of only two countries where they had a COVID, I don't use the word pandemic because there's no pandemic of deaths. They had COVID and they had a number of deaths due to COVID. When that finished, they had the real spike in deaths.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pandemic of vaccination, pandemic of injections. Mm-hmm. So we had COVID first, then we had the injections. So you can tell I'm getting a bit angry about this because they're killing people. They're killing tens of thousands of people. But worse than that, Efrat, they are saying they don't know. So if you're a doctor, if you're a health official, if you're a bureaucrat, your duty is to find out what is killing these 26,000 plus people.
So what are you guys doing about it?
What happened was we've been calling for a Royal Commission for years now.
Yes.
We also want a Senate inquiry because a Senate inquiry can compel witnesses to attend. Mm-hmm. And also a Royal Commission the terms of reference are framed by the Prime Minister. Mm-hmm. So it can be a whitewash. Mm-hmm. Before the current Prime Minister got into power, in the election campaign, he said, I promise a Royal Commission or something similar.
Oh, no.
Right. But the intent was something really serious.
Yeah.
So government manager of government business in the Senate is Senator Katie Gallagher. She's pretty senior. She was the chairman of the committee that was investigating COVID as it was unfolding. One of her committee's recommendations was a royal commission. So a senior minister in the Labor Party has also recommended that. So Anthony Albanese recently, about September, October last year, said, I'm not going to hold a commission, I'm going to hold an inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
And the inquiry's terms of reference were just a whitewash. Nothing to do with investigating the state premiers who did most of the enforcement, just a witch hunt on the Prime Minister.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not independent, it's pathetic. But what it did do was, by that time, the injections had been in place 2 years.
Yes.
We know a lot of people now, even though they took the injections voluntarily, know of people who've died from them. So the word is out. When they saw the Prime Minister renege on his promise for a COVID Royal Commission,
yep,
they were horrified. They were upset. So then what we did was move a referral to a committee to develop the draft terms of reference for a future possible Royal Commission.
Ooh. Okay.
So what that does, first of all, the Greens and Pocock and Lambie and the Labor Party usually oppose something like that. They want to cover it up. But they knew what would happen, because I would call for a vote in a division so you'd get a photo of who voted against it. So we could sense that the people had turned. People were disgusted, even members of the Labor Party in the Senate. And so they weren't game to oppose it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got through.
Good.
So what that enables then to do is to get submissions and from citizens, from
yes,
specialists, from scientists, from doctors, COVID injected, anyone in the country, and also from overseas, and put in submissions and then invite them, select people to come and give their testimony. What it's done is it's set up a kind of an inquiry, so we have experts saying these are the negative things that happened.
mm-hmm,
So there's no alternative but to hold a proper Royal Commission.
good.
That's what we're doing. We're setting it up. We've got former barrister Julian Gillespie, Dr. Ian Brighthope, Peter Pham, a lawyer, and other doctors have clubbed together and done a phenomenal submission. So what we're hoping, the government apparently is saying to some of its departments, make a submission. And what they're trying to do is to clog up so we have very few witnesses from the truthful side appearing. But what I think will happen is that they will just show that there's a need for more sessions of witnesses. So who knows?
And you're saying we're a civilized country, and still during COVID, it wasn't very civil. The sites that were coming out of Australia, which maybe some of them were staged, I don't know, maybe they wanted some of those sites to come out of really brutal police violence against protesters, or different things that have happened, especially in Victoria, which was locked down massively. Shooting of rubber bullets, right? All the Victorians I met, they all talk about it.
Yeah.
They're traumatized by it. It was completely unusual, right?
Dramatically. But do you know what saved it?
What?
There's a union called the CFMEU. Okay?
What is that?
The Construction, Forestry, Mining and Energy, Maritime and Energy Union. Okay. They're known to be fairly militant.
Okay.
But in some of the militant unions, there's a strong rump of decent people. Some of the large union bosses are in it for their own agendas. Mm-hmm. Some of the union bosses are known to be thugs, accused of being thugs in the press, in courts. So there's a fair bit of data about it. Most of the construction workers, of course, just don't care about that kind of stuff. They're just happy to just go along, do their work and go home. They were under threat of being mandated. The construction workers from the most militant union in the country marched on the CFMEU headquarters in Melbourne and trashed it.
I saw it.
That was what woke people up.
Yeah,
because what happened was that the membership of the CFMEU rose against the bosses of the CFMEU, who pay a lot of money to the Labor government in Victoria.
Mm.
And the Labor government in Victoria was doing all of the anti-human terrorist work. And so they got a very good lesson, and they stopped doing a lot of what they were doing from that moment on.
So I almost feel like certain countries played a certain role during this COVID charade the past few years. Israel obviously had a role in being the medical lab of the world in providing data to agencies, federal agencies around the world that needed that data in order to say that this was safe and effective. But Australia, I think, had a social role, like in a way showing that the people are obedient, they become obedient when force is being exercised. Also ratting on each other, like people were dobbing each other.
Dob someone in this country.
Different behaviors that came out of here that I think in a way someone was kind of experimenting on the population, a social experiment. And then someone told me that it just strengthened what I thought, that Monash University has a running social experiment from 2020. And she sent me an article about it, about the behavior during COVID. That leads me to think that maybe there is some kind of an experiment here to see how the society is behaving, because we know that the World Economic Forum and people like Yuval Noah Harari are saying, it's written on the website, by the way, that COVID was just the jumpstart to see how humanity will take on extreme measures when an emergency happens, so that it can prepare us for future emergencies that will happen, all very conveniently. So do you think that Australia played a certain role here, and Australians have played a role without knowing it?
Yes. The answer to your first question is yes, and the answer to your second question is yes. But take in a bigger picture and divert for a minute. These bastards, the parasitic, predatory globalists, they have quite often told us exactly what they're doing. Mm-hmm. You just have to listen to them.
They always say, yes.
Maurice Strong, who cooked up fraudulent climate claims.
Yes.
He's the father of climate change. Mm-hmm. He said he had two aims in life. One was to be put in place an unelected, socialist, global governance.
He said that.
He said that. The other one was to deindustrialize Western civilization. And he said, what we need is to end industrialization, and isn't it our duty to do that? Where have we come in the last 170 years? This computer, this technology, you can fly into the country. All of our improved health until Big Pharma came along, and all the longevity, the choices we have, the productivity, the ease, the safety, the security. They want to destroy that, send us back to the caves. These people are that way inclined. So once you understand that, and you understand the critical role of the World Health Organization, and how can I forget Tedros, a known terrorist presiding over an organization in which 83 people have filed complaints for sexual abuse and rape. They did their own internal investigation. Even their own internal investigation found those claims were verified. Wow. And they said, if you don't do anything about it, you will be, what was their word, rapist culture? I can't remember, culture of rape. They didn't do anything about it. Then you've got people like Bill Gates, who funds the World Health Organization. And you've got Fauci, who's a genocidal maniac. Fauci has killed thousands of black Africans doing experiments. Mm-hmm. He's killed American kids doing experiments. They picked on foster kids to do experiments. Robert Kennedy's book, The Real Anthony Fauci, marvelous. That's the sort of people who are running the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization, the United Nations, Maurice Strong, he set up the United Nations Environmental Program. He manipulated the UN to get the United Nations Environmental Program going. And guess who was the first Secretary General of the United Nations Environmental Program? Maurice Strong. Without the science, and contrary to the science, the director of the American EPA was given a report saying we've just done an investigation into the DDT insecticide. There is no environmental impact or human impact from DDT. Yet they still banned DDT. And as a result of that ban that was driven by the United Nations Environmental Program, 40 to 50 million people died needlessly because it would have stopped malaria in Africa and in India. We talk about Mao Zedong, 60 million deaths. Well, insert in there Maurice Strong, 40 to 50 million deaths. Then Joseph Stalin, 40 million. Hitler, 20 million. Maurice Strong is responsible for killing 40 to 50 million people who otherwise should have been alive.
And the recent numbers coming out of the COVID conference in Romania talked about 17 million deaths from COVID.
No, from the injections.
From the the injections,
not from
the COVID vaccines, there's jabs.
So once you understand that, and you understand that Bill Gates was an investor in the
WHO.
Well, not only that,
Gavi.
that he's an investor in Gavi, but he was also an investor in the COVID injections.
The pharma, yeah.
This was not planned over 3 months. Such bad decisions weren't made in just 3 months of panic. We then learned fairly recently that in 2007, the United States, Britain, and Canada signed the Defense Countermeasures Consortium, and that was the defense working with the health authorities. Mm-hmm. In 2008 or 2009, Australia joined with Julia Gillard as Prime Minister, signed us on. That gave the military the opportunity to jump in. So we had troops on the streets in this country. We had troops on the streets in other countries as well. But we also know, you probably know from Sasha Ladapova in the United States, that the COVID injections were not tested. And we know that's been admitted here in this country too. They were not tested, and they got approval because they were defense countermeasures. So this was orchestrated. We know that they had Bent 201
in 2019. Mm-hmm.
We also know that they had inoculation handbook just tossed out, not even followed. Inoculation handbook said you don't medicate anyone without informed consent.
Same playbook in Israel. We had the same thing. We had a drill for a pandemic emergency, and it was thrown out the window.
Yep.
WHO guidelines were embraced.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the health minister at the time, Greg Hunt, he was previously the environment minister. He's the one who brought in the safeguard mechanism, which is the foundations for a global warming carbon dioxide tax for the globalists.
What is safeguard mechanism?
It's a nice name for basically the basis of a tax.
Okay.
It's bullshit. Then we see Chris Bowen bring it in under the Labor Party just recently. So they ramped it up. Okay. So what I'm saying is that Greg Hunt was the health minister under Scott Morrison who introduced this untested injection. He even said, we are engaged in the world's largest clinical vaccination trial. Mm-hmm. Greg Hunt, in the years 2000 and 2001, was manager for strategy for the World Economic Forum.
Surprise, surprise.
And what's his name? Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab. Bless you. He has admitted, he's taken pride in saying we have infected, or no, that wasn't the word he used. Infiltrated, thank you. Cabinets around the world. And we know that there's one lady here in Australia, Claire O'Neill, who's admitted to being a World Economic Foundation Global Young Leaders.
Young leader. Yes, they're everywhere.
It was planned.
Australia has announced some kind of a compensation plan for people who were vaccine-injured. There was something like that, but was it just another wash?
Yes.
Hardly anyone is receiving money. Correct. Right?
Correct. And the amounts for being paralyzed for the rest of your life, pretty trivial. They're low amounts.
Unbelievable.
And it's very hard to get.
Unbelievable.
And we indemnified the drug companies, Pfizer, Moderna, for any adverse events. We indemnified them. It's the people's responsibility. Because the people are paying for it.
They can't sue anyone.
The people are paying for it.
With their tax money.
But what they've done is they've made it very difficult to get so that the amount is not high.
Okay.
They've limited the liability. So I ask this question quite often. Who pays?
Yes.
The people pay twice. The people pay through their taxes for indemnifying Pfizer. They actually pay 3 times. People pay the largest transfer of wealth in Australia's history, $8 billion plus to these bastards making these untested injections. And the people pay with their lives for taking this shit.
Yes.
Now, if you had a bureaucrat who cared, they would open up. But they don't care because they're so damn afraid. It comes back to this, how we talked right from the start. It comes back to this admitting that mistake. Control versus freedom. They're controlling themselves. These people don't look healthy.
They're not happy. Never admit it.
No. So that's why we've got to drag it through them.
And then what they're doing is they're adding onto those people who were hurt and speaking out, or people who are awake and speaking out, or people that are just questioning and speaking out. They're adding all these censorship rules and legislations. This is happening too in Australia, right?
It happened. Not only is it happening, about to happen, or they're about to introduce legislation, it happened. The Department of Home Affairs, which is like our major security organization, it's a big organization. It looks after immigration and all kinds of things, borders. They were passing on from the health department notification to Facebook, maybe Instagram.
Big tech.
And so big tech would take down content. The health department did it directly at times.
How directly?
They just went straight, they bypassed Home Affairs and went straight to the platform. So the censorship's already there. Now what they're looking at...
That was during COVID?
During COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they also arrested some people for posting stuff?
Yes, a pregnant lady down in Melbourne. She was wanting to facilitate more people going to the protest.
Yes.
So she posted, and the police came and assaulted her and removed her. Took a pregnant lady.
Unbelievable.
They knocked old grannies down to the ground. They slammed a man's head into the concrete platform.
Do you think those were just tactics to get people to just scare them off so that they don't try and resist? Or do you think it's legit, like that's how they were?
There's an irony here, because what they use is fear to control people.
Mm-hmm.
And they use fear to suppress people.
And when you see that, it's scary.
It's highly effective.
Yeah.
And they also use it in many, many ways. They show pictures on the TV that we now know were orchestrated of thousands of dead bodies in the street. They hype it up. They play dramatic music. They use language. They'll say, this COVID is a real killer.
Use repetition.
Yes.
Same messaging.
Right.
Yeah.
And the mask. The mask. Every time you saw someone with a mask on, you were reminded of COVID. You're reminded of the fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's bullshit. Masks are not effective. And there was nothing about COVID that required a mask, even if it was effective.
Of course.
So it's all indoctrination. But the other thing they're doing, we've got to be careful about, Efrat, is that what they're also using is they're packaging things as being convenient. So not on COVID, but on cashless society.
Yes.
Because if they get a cashless society in here, then they can get a social income, then they can get control of your income.
Yes.
And they will then say, if you keep posting these podcasts, young lady, you are not going to get your social credit.
That's right.
And it's already happening in terms of some of the carbon dioxide outputs of some cars.
The personal carbon allowances, checking how much carbon you're emitting.
And they're now, in France, they've actually had one, a climate lockdown. You can't go outside because it's hot. Yes.
They'll tell you if to go outside or not. They tried doing it in Israel. It was very funny. We all laughed at it. They can't really, they won't get away with it. How is the media in Australia acting now? It's all bought. There is some independent media.
Well, I've got to give a shout out to Adam Crichton. Do you know him?
No.
Wonderful young journalist. He's a true journalist. He's very, very strong on fact. He doesn't have opinions. Mm-hmm. He doesn't make his opinions felt, I should say. Mm-hmm. In the story, he's very objective.
Yes.
He wrote an article on December 19th discussing the Texas state government's suit on Pfizer, taking Pfizer to court. Mm-hmm. Really well done.
Good.
Really well done. So I must say that I got his article, and you can't post the whole article. It's too long, and links don't work because it's behind a paywall.
Yes.
So so I broke it up into lengths that fit on Facebook, right? Because we use Hootsuite to get it on Facebook. And so I started copying and pasting.
Clipping.
Thank you. Clipping the article. And I found out I was clipping every paragraph.
It was so good.
It was so good. So I put it in 5 installments.
Yes.
And it was just wonderful. And normally, I've done that once before. The first article, you think people get, oh yeah, we really like this, and you get lots of thousands of likes. Second one, hang on, this is what you did yesterday, hundreds of likes. Then it dwindled right down. This one got a large number of likes every single episode. His article was just packed with data about Pfizer.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and so That's a credit to News Corp. But News Corp is also, I know from a producer of a show on Sky News that my name was on a list of people not to appear on Sky News.
Still?
I don't know if there's still.
Are you censored there?
I haven't been on. No.
Wow.
And it happened because...
But Sky News is relatively open.
In the evenings it is, but not during the day. It's pretty much left-wing during the day. There are many ways of censoring people.
Yes.
The very first time I got into the Senate, the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, has 3 flagship programs. And I was on all 3 in my first few days in the Senate, completely new to media. And they set it up so that I would fail or be embarrassed. But I had my data and I could rebut them. So then they didn't have me on very often. Or they would have me on and they would pre-record it. So they could selectively edit it.
Of course.
So then Pauline and I said, we're not appearing unless it's live.
Great.
So, but then they set up programs in such a way that you're in the negative. Q&A, for example, question and answer show.
Yes.
They screen the audience so that the majority of the audience are on the government's view. They screen the audience so that the ones who are the government's view sit behind the speaker, so that when the speaker for who's pushing the government or the globalist narrative, they're all going yes, and so the people at home think wonderful. So they do many, many different tricks.
So the media is manipulative here as it is everywhere. ADH is also a new channel here in Australia.
It's good.
Doing a good job.
Very good.
Yes, I like them.
Alexandra Marshall is just wonderful. She's a bright young. Well, she's not so young. She's 30 odd, but she's got a very good talent.
You guys need more independent journalism here. More podcasters. Yeah, you have Maria Z doing a good job as well. You have really good Aussies doing.
We have three forms of media. We have the new independent People's Media, which pushes truth and freedom. That's you. We have, and the other podcasters, we have the anti-social media, which is Facebook and Instagram. They're throttling my page. They're throttling Jared Rennick's page. Yep. Right back.
They are. But you guys are being viral because other people share you.
Yes.
So that's the key.
Yeah, we get ours back from overseas. And then we've got the mouthpiece media or the legacy media, because it's dying.
It is dying.
Big Brother media.
It's the last days of it. And what is behind putting those censorship rules in place? I heard you talk about the fact that they're putting these rules in place means that they're desperate.
Yes. So there's a little twist around control.
Yeah. To
control someone, sometimes they use fear. Fear does a couple of things. First of all, it terrifies people, but it also locks up the frontal cortex, our rational. It goes straight to the fight or flight or freeze mechanism in our brain.
Right.
It bypasses the logical reasoning, so people can't think straight.
Right.
There's an irony to that, though. People who try to control, always beneath control, there is fear. So if someone's trying to control you, they're afraid of you. If they're trying to censor you, they're afraid of your words.
Yes.
Now, I don't care what you say to me. You cannot hurt me. You cannot. It's my interpretation of your words that causes my hurt, which is my responsibility.
Yes.
But what they've done is they brought in regulations that say you can have hate speech. You might hate me intently. You might talk very badly about me. But only if I hate myself will you do any damage to me.
100%.
So our society doesn't understand that. So what happens is people are very vulnerable, and they think the ultimate thing, though, is Efrat, they think the government is here to protect them. And that's what's happened. Government has worked into a place now where they control people and they steal from people. And government is now a vehicle for stealing from you and me to take our money and give it to the global parasitic corporations. The Pfizers, the BlackRocks, the Vanguards. That's ultimately what's doing. People in this country think, fix that problem, legislate, regulate. No, because if you want to take on a bank now because they've treated you very badly, good luck, because you won't get through the maze of regulations. They will bury you in lawyers. They just pull out a few lawyers and you're buried.
Yes.
Regulations help the powerful. because regulations always make it difficult, whereas common law, which used to exist, it still exists. We've replaced common law with statute law. Common law, I could take you to court and say what you did infringed on my property rights or my health or whatever, pay up. And a jury would find you either guilty or me frivolous.
Mm-hmm.
But now what's happening is you just turn around and say, Malcolm, it doesn't meet the statute, so I can keep doing it, and you're hurting me. So because some bureaucrat drafted a rule that politicians passed, with most of them not even reading the bill.
I'm reading bills. Citizens need to read bills. They don't get it.
Well, politicians can't read all the bills because they just come through so damn quickly.
Enough.
But we make sure someone in our office has read it, and we grill them about it.
Yes.
But so someone has read it. But
I think we reached the stage where citizens have to do this too, because almost everything that comes out now is against us.
But you can't read that volume.
No.
That's all you'd be doing.
But you can organize.
Yes.
You have a community of people that, lawyers or smart people that love reading documents. There are people like that, I know.
Yeah. Look at Naomi Wolf.
Yes.
A doctor, but not a medical doctor, a PhD doctor.
Yes.
She organized 3,500 volunteers, experts, scientists, doctors.
They did amazing work.
Stunning work. So the regulations are put in place to protect the corporations.
Yes.
We have regulations in this place, in this country, in industrial relations, that are supposed to be protecting workers and employers, especially small businesses. They're that thick. What employee can possibly read that? What small business owner could possibly read that? If you did read it all, how could you remember it? How could you understand all what's going on? That legislation is put in place for union bosses, so that their role is entrenched. The worker needs them to interpret the law. For lawyers, for consultants, for HR practitioners, IR practitioners, for industry associations, and for global corporations, so that they can just fool people and hide behind it all. That's why it's there.
Yeah.
So government comes out and says, we've enacted this legislation to protect you. Bullshit. It's to screw you.
Once we understand that, it's all going to be easier. And speaking of stealing from you, which is one of the things you refer to, speaking of finance, do you think they're going to bring about, as the next step here in Australia, CBDC as well, as they will do in many other countries, or at least try to?
Yes, they'll try. We know that the Reserve Bank of Australia has been playing with digital currencies.
Yes.
We know that they're doing that for internal use.
Yes.
We know that they're also doing it for international use.
Yes.
We also know new payments network. Every single electronic transaction, everything in this country goes through a central node. So it can be controlled, monitored, so they can tell what you're doing, what you're spending your money on. So they're also working out a digital identity bill so that they'll be able to collect data on what you spend your money on, where you travel, what you say on social media. Every single thing about your life they have on there. They're justifying it on the benefit of a convenience. We're going to look after your data. We're going to make your data more secure, Efrat.
Well, you have 2 cyber attacks last year. That's a good excuse to get the government to protect you from that again, right?
Well, see, what they're doing there is they're saying that Optus cyber attack and the other one are reasons why we should have to protect your data. But what they don't tell you is that the majority of data breaches come from government and big tech. So if they can't control it, who can? The other thing that they don't tell you that we saw in the digital identity bill was that they will take your data as a big brother government.
Yes.
They will sell it.
To whom?
Who would want it?
Corporations?
Of course. Retailing.
The government will send.
Yes.
Will sell
and they
data of the citizens?
That's set up in the digital identity bill when it was first mooted. I don't know if it's in it now.
Okay.
But we exposed that.
Wow.
And my office is the one that exposed that.
I can't believe it.
No, it's true.
And it's hard to surprise me these days.
So what that means is they can sell it if the government wants to a foreign corporation. So your data is stored overseas, not in accordance with Australian regulations.
Well, not that I'm that surprised, because I'll give you another parallel example from Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, our prime minister, has announced about a year ago that he's working on the largest genetic database coming from Israel that he's going to monetize to the world. Pharma company, whatever, genetic database.
Just introduce.
Biotechnology. We are the biggest and the best in biotechnology.
Yeah.
And he's creating another genetic database to monetize. Again, you were talking before about how they're making money off of us, how they're stealing from us. That's another form of theft.
So what could happen? Your health data, I forgot to add that to it. Health data, financial data, travel data, what you say on social media, etc. So if you want access to your health data, you'll have to pay some corporation somewhere in the world to get access to it.
Far out. Wow.
And that then leads the way into a central bank digital currency.
Yes.
And then that leads to social credit.
Yes.
That also leads to 15-minute cities.
Correct.
Because in London right now, they have got in place, if you're not driving an electric vehicle, then you have to pay tax if you go so far. It's a fine, but it's called a tax. It's a fine. And if you don't pay, it escalates for every day you haven't paid it. So that's basically a 15-minute city right now. So what we'll have is not fences and roadblocks, but we'll have cameras. This
is the modern jail. This is the modern prison.
Right. So what we've got, what was passed through the Senate, we opposed it. Very few people opposed it. Very few. Pauline Hanson, myself, I think the usual culprits, Antic and Babette and Rennick. What they can do now, identity verification bill.
Yes.
Okay, it's gone through the Senate.
It's gone through. That's
yes,
it.
Gone through.
Okay.
And they pave the way for it. It enables the use of cameras.
Yes.
For biometric data, facial recognition. The New South Wales government has said that they're setting up cameras all over the place, so they'll be able to assess a driver to find out whether or not he's got a driver's license. So that sounds pretty good,
Analyze
doesn't it?
the face?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
In an intersection. You drive through the intersection.
China. That's it.
So what that tells you is that they can refer instantly back to a database.
Correct.
What that also tells you is they can do it for anything else. So the people swallow that bullshit that it's just for driver's license to make sure people have got driver's license. Bullshit.
This is the most dangerous slippery slope.
But they can also tell you who is sitting next to you as a passenger. Why were you in there with that Israeli terrorist, Efrat, Fenigson?
Yes.
So then that enables them to not only look after your health data and
safety,
finance data, but also who you're with.
Yes.
Now they say that'll be good for terrorists. What bloody terrorist is going to have his facial and biometric data on a database?
Correct.
It enables everyone but terrorists to get identified.
They want to surveil everyone.
Correct. No, they want to control everyone.
Control, that's right, through surveillance.
So what we're doing, Efrat, is that we used to live into feudalism.
Yes.
Then we had the middle class develop under after the scientific revolution and the industrial revolution. Now they're wanting to take us back to feudalism where they control us. What is Yuval Noah Harari? He said that we're useless eaters, or was it Klaus Schwab? Well, I can't remember which one.
I'm sure both of them said it.
So what they want is the same thing a feudal lord wanted. A few people in charge of the country, a few people in charge of the planet, you to simply produce for them and to eat enough to keep you alive. And they want lab meat. They're already talking about lab meat. Gates is talking about lab meat. Gates is now the biggest owner of land in the United States, farming land in the United States. So what they want is to take us off meat, which is very, very healthy for us, put us on bugs, which is dangerous for us, or put us on lab meat, which is very dangerous for us.
Processed foods.
Well, it's not just the thought of process. It's also the thought of infection, because these things are grown in a lab, cultured out of bugs. I mean bacterial bugs.
Yes.
And they've got tissue damage in them, and that'll be rancid, putrid stuff.
Yeah. Once again, we don't know what the results of that would be. Horrible. No. That's a very slippery slope. So how do you suggest Australians to, I wouldn't say fight back, but take back their sovereignty when it comes to the digital ID, the money, CBDC? What can they do?
For the last 12 months, my wife and I have given up credit cards. We haven't surrendered them because sometimes you need them. but we use cash. So I go to the bank and get out cash, carry cash with me.
Yes.
And I pay motel bills when I'm traveling in cash.
Mm-hmm.
So we're asking people to use cash wherever you can.
Yes.
The other thing about cash is that if the power goes out, and it's going to go out a lot more soon,
yes,
you haven't got FPOS. So small businesses need to keep cash. People need to keep cash. What the banks are doing, Efrat, in this country is they're closing down ATMs,
yes,
closing down bank branches.
Cashless.
There's a Senate inquiry going on that I participated in into, it is cashless, into closure of regional bank branches.
Yes.
Because it guts a town. When you've got no bank, it guts a town because people stop doing their shopping there. They go to the next town with a bank.
Ripple effect.
Right. But when you look at the data, the number of branches that are closing is also in the suburbs.
Mm.
So we've got NAB shut where I am. ANZ is shut. Westpac shut. There's only the Commonwealth.
They're centralizing that too.
Correct.
They want more people in less banks. That's
yes.
easier to then, when you introduce CBDC, it's easier to control less banks.
So let me give you a little fact here. Recently, I attended a Senate inquiry into closure of regional banks. And one of my staffers gave me a list of companies from overseas that own shares in the Big Four. The Big Four control 90% of our cash deposits. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State, about half a dozen of these companies. I think Vanguard was at 3%, mm-hmm. but combined they had about 9.5%, 10%. You say, well, that's not control. When you look at the mums and dads who never vote, you look at the institutions, the major superannuation funds
yes.
that are told how to vote.
Yes.
Then what you see is that is a controlling interest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost identical. Westpac, NAB, ANZ, Commonwealth Bank, all the same. Minor differences between the amounts of percentages. What we've got, controlling 90% of our cash deposits in this country, is one bank with 4 logos.
They're all controlled by the same
Correct.
people.
Correct. And then on top of that, during the global financial crisis, you saw that there was a bank bailout. The Federal Reserve Bank and the American Treasury gave Goldman Sachs had a loan, gave a loan to Enron, and the government bailed Goldman Sachs out. So the taxpayer paid for them to and that was all caused by stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've got is when these banks make a killing because of the regulation protecting them, they pocket the money. So they use a capitalist for making profits. When they lose money, they're suddenly socialists because they take the money off the taxpayer. Now we've got all over the world, we've got a bail-in legislation. Hundreds of countries have got bail-in legislation. We have it in this country. The difference between us and New Zealand is that in New Zealand they admit there's a bail-in. In this country they deny there's a bail-in.
Okay.
So I was out of the Senate briefly when that bail-in was introduced. When I got back into the Senate, there's one term we introduced, just a sentence. It was defining deposit. If the government had changed that, if we'd been successful with our definition of deposit, it would have meant that the bail-in would not work.
Mm-hmm.
Every party except ours voted against my little change. So what it means is that in a bailout, the government gives money to bail the banks out. Mm-hmm. They said they didn't think it was fair on the taxpayer to bail companies out. So what they did, and people don't understand the concept of a bail-in, is that in a bail-in, a bank says it's in trouble. They will take your deposits, give you a share certificate, which is basically worthless because the bank's in trouble. Yeah. So what you've got then is either a worthless certificate, so you've lost your deposit, so you've lost your cash, or you can wait a few years until hopefully it'll eventually pull back up in value. But people don't know that's what's going on. And then people are told by the governments that there's deposit guarantees. Well, the deposit guarantees, listen to this, there's $1.2 trillion in deposits that are covered by the bail-in.
Mm-hmm.
The limit for the amount that can be that can be protected by the guarantees, deposit guarantees, is 80 billion. So it's a fraction.
Yeah.
So if you've got your money in a cash account, you're gone in a bail-in. You'll have shares, worthless shares. With a bail-in, they just exchange your cash for share certificates.
Listen,
it's stealing.
Of course it's stealing, and people are not even familiar with how the fiat money system is designed and how it's working. And you said before that some of those mechanisms, the bail-in, the bailout, what were you referring to, is out of stupidity, not nefarious, you think? Out of stupidity?
The majority of the politicians would not understand
what I just said. On the politician side, I agree with you. On the banker side?
The bank side, the government side, it's nefarious.
Nefarious.
Yeah. It's to get what they want, just like men and women in the past would get a horse to do their dirty work. Nowadays, they've got a petrol engine or electricity from a coal-fired power station, or they had it. What the banks want to do is to bludge off you, and they want not only your money for ease, the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, and the people who own them, but what they want is protection. So they want to be able to take all kinds of incredible risks, because remember, in finance, it's risk versus return.
Yes.
Risk is just as important as return. They want to take all kinds of stupid risks, as they did in the global financial crisis, and not have a real risk there, because you will bail out or bail in. So they're not really risking a damn thing.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's fiat currency, so they're not risking anything anyway.
Because they can print more.
Right. So, and then we have inflation, which is what's caused the current inflation around the world, all the massive quantitative easing that came out during COVID. Who pays for that? The people are now paying for it with high inflation.
Of course.
It's a tax.
Of course. It's a silent killer.
Yeah. And what did Henry Ford say? Back in the 1910s, somewhere around there, he said, if Americans knew what was happening with their banking system, there'd be a revolution by morning.
Yes. Correct. And from all the smart money people that I speak to on my podcast, they all say that we're already in the process of the collapse, because they say this coming financial collapse will not just be one event. It will be an ongoing process that would lead us to a very tough financial situation all around the world, where the fiat currencies will be reset in many countries. And in my eyes, then their plan is to introduce the CBDC as the new and improved fiat.
Senator Ron Paul, who's a very well-educated, he's no longer a senator, as you know, he's retired, but he's a very well-educated on finance. And he wrote a book called End the Fed, Federal Reserve Bank. Wonderful book, very short, simple, clear, astoundingly easy to read. He said that in that book, every major recession since 1913 formation of the Federal Reserve Bank has been deliberate.
Yes.
It's been the responsibility of the Federal Reserve Bank. What they do is they flood the joint with cash by reducing interest rates. People overcommit, then they quickly pull the rug out from under them and they collapse. And guess who takes the assets? The owners of the banks. So they foreclose. It happened in 1907. There was J.P. Morgan and Rockefellers in America. They were the big banks in America. They engineered the collapse in 1907. So many farmers lost their land over that. The banks took it. Then Woodrow Wilson came in after having his campaign for president funded by the major banks. Edward Mandell House, who was a very strong behind-the-scenes manipulator of American politics, he got Woodrow Wilson to get an inquiry into the 1907 so that it would never happen again. Heard that before? So then they did that inquiry. What they did in that inquiry was they got the major bankers, put them on a train. It's famous, infamous. Sent them down to Georgia in the middle of the night. They went off the Georgia coast to Jekyll Island.
Of course,
and
that's
formed the
where
Federal
they
Reserve
formed
Bank.
the Federal Reserve.
And that's their toy.
In my eyes, what they're doing right now, what we're seeing, I think 2024 is going to be full of it, is controlled demolition for the next financial collapse. They know that it's going to collapse. They're just doing it piece by piece, the way they want to to do it until their CBDC is ready, or I don't know. So they'll pull in another war, or they'll do all these things to cover up the fact that the monetary system is going to collapse. And they'll blame it on other things, just like they blamed COVID for the excessive money printing. And so how can we make people aware of that? At least that's what I'm doing, showing people that the biggest thing right now is to learn about money so that you can preserve your wealth, so that you can protect what you've worked really hard for. And cash is one way to protect it. But I also talk about gold and I talk about Bitcoin, because I think people need to understand that there are ways to take your money out of the system.
But then there are certain flaws there too. I made quite a bit of money out of share investing. Took a lot of time to study it, but we sold all our shares back in 2010 because it looked pretty serious then. And so I've missed out on the share market growth since then, but I've had the security of having gold and silver.
Yes.
And our super fund is half gold, half cash. So we have got to be very, very careful. So what we've done is in our personal accounts, we've taken all of our money out of the banks, put it back into one set of shares, or one little portfolio of shares, and we've lent our money to our daughter and her husband because they just had a baby. So what we've done is, because they got a loan with fixed interest, very cheap, all of a sudden it skyrocketed under COVID just last July.
Sure.
So what we did was protect our grandson and our daughter and our son-in-law, protect ourselves, because we took our money out of an account.
Yes.
And so they're paying us back now,
instead
less
of
the interest instead of the bank. So they're paying much. They'll get their house more quickly.
It's very
so
smart.
We've got to look at what we can do to protect our families.
Correct.
Because that's the fundamental protection unit. And what these globalist parasites are doing, Efrat, is they're destroying property rights.
Yes.
They're destroying families. They're destroying religions, and they're doing that through many mechanisms. They're destroying it through sexual exploitation of children. They're destroying it through the transgender or gender dysphoria, which is complete nonsense. Again, they're anti-human. They're killing people to do this. They're making money out of it. They're putting young kids, on gender drugs for the rest of their life. They're causing suicides when people realize they've just changed. That you can't change gender. When they've changed their genitals, lopped off their genitals, and then they suddenly realize the promise they were told that it was reversible is not true, they commit suicide. And then we've got state government in Victoria and other governments talking about it, saying that if you as a parent dare question your child, if it comes up to you and says, "Mum, I want to change my gender," if you dare question, they can put you in jail. That's what's happening in Victoria in this country.
Oh, my God.
And they're talking in Victoria, not big talk, but some of the radicals are talking about it, I think in America as well, that they will have abortions made legal for 3 months after birth. That's murder.
What?
Yes.
For 3 months after birth?
After birth. That's murder. These things are coming from the United Nations.
Wow.
World Economic Forum. They have no regard for
their agenda
us.
is clear. I just want to make one comment about what I said before, just so it's clearer to you when I say that I'm advocating for other means to preserve your wealth. With Bitcoin, it's very interesting to follow another country that's doing that. That's El Salvador. It's the first country in the world that has made Bitcoin legal tender. And the economy there is flourishing since that happened in the past 2 years. Very, very interesting case study to follow. I just interviewed for my podcast the two ambassadors coming out of El Salvador, Max Kaiser and Stacy.
Oh, Max Kaiser.
They're amazing.
Yeah, he is.
So they're working with Bukele, the president of El Salvador, to transform the country. And he's doing a fantastic job. So I really recommend you look at that and learn a little bit, just because it's an interesting conversation to have with politicians, and most politicians know nothing about it. So,
well, I've got to admit, I've not done much. I'm very apprehensive about it because it just seems like another fiat currency. But someone did.
No, it's not.
Yeah, someone
it's
did
worth
have
a research. I think it's worth listening to what Bitcoin could do to a country. Very, very interesting.
We've seen this. The globalists are in place because they have control of the Western money systems.
Yes. Yes, and Bitcoin cannot be controlled. It's completely decentralized, and I call it the digital gold because it has all the properties of gold. It is just digital, but it's completely decentralized, and no one entity can control it. It's very, very interesting.
Okay, well, I'll look at that for sure. But what I was going to say was that China,
yes,
and Russia, the BRICS,
yes,
are now looking at forming an alternative to the US dollar.
Correct. And pegging it to gold.
Yes, and I've worked and lived and studied in America for 5 years. I'd spent 15 months traveling. That's what Australians do. We sell our car and buy a plane ticket home. But for the first 15 months after I worked there, I just spent the time traveling because I was fascinated by America. And I eventually married an American. We've got 2 American children who are dual citizens. That country that I had so much respect for is just the world's greatest terrorist organization now. American people are fantastic. They are lovely people, so caring, so frank, so easy to engage, so wonderful. But their government has been hijacked by these globalist parasites since 1913 and probably before. And it's now controlling the world's largest military force ever. They don't even need a fraction of what they've got. They can walk into any country on earth. They can bring Australia along with us, just like little patsies following. The Britons go in after them. Look at the wars they've had. Look at the wars they've caused. And this is something else that Ron Paul said, very well read. He said every major war since 1913 is directly attributable to the Federal Reserve Bank.
Yes, if people research what happened during the Second World War with funding both sides and funding the Nazis.
And the First War.
And the First World War, of course.
Yep. So they control big pharma, big defense, big education, universities. They're controlling them through the grants. They're controlling them through woke. They're controlling big food. They're trying to create a big food now. They've destroyed the nutritional sector.
Yes.
Because the food pyramid is upside down. And I only learned that. I've been very much one to do exercise and look after my health. But it's only recently that I've done the research and other people have done the research showing the food pyramid is upside down. We've been killing ourselves. Meat's wonderful. Fat's wonderful. Animal fat is wonderful.
Yes.
The way to lose weight is to get on animal fats. I mean, we were told the complete reverse.
There are many things that we are learning now that we've been lied to about or manipulated about. And I think we're in the age of Aquarius, which is the age of truth. And we're entering that age. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how people are waking up to all these truths and what kind of actions they're starting to take in their lives.
Yep.
And on that note, I wanted to ask you to end with a message of hope for people.
The solutions lie in data. Not everyone is comfortable with data. The solutions lie in more people waking up, which means everybody can have their share of helping and participating in sharing our videos, sharing your podcasts, sharing my videos around the world, getting more people informed. And above all, be very, very proud to be human. So I'm getting teary just saying that because fancy having to say that. Be very, very proud of being human. If I hold a gun to your head, you know that I'm controlling you. If I force you to get an injection so that you can feed your child, you know that I'm controlling you.
Yes.
But if I grab you when you were 3 years old and indoctrinate you all the way through preschool, school, high school, university, you don't know I'm controlling you.
No,
and that's the state.
Normal.
That's the state we're in.
Yeah.
And so what we have to do is to wake people up. And what they've been telling us, these global parasites, is that you as a human are uncaring, irresponsible, greedy, rapacious, you're not worthy, and I will protect you by being a government, the globalist predators, but we'll be a facade behind the puppets who we've got. What they don't tell us is we're humans too. So the globalist parasites are simply stealing your right to self-govern. So it's very, very important to realize that they can be easily undone. And I mean easily. I've been calling out the World Economic Forum for a few years now. The World Economic Forum recently had a page on strategy. I think it's about 12 months ago. It was half a page. And they were bemoaning the fact, in their view, that so many Western countries are becoming racist, homophobic, transphobic. And they mentioned one country, Australia. And they said we're being indoctrinated, these countries are being indoctrinated by far-right extremists.
Wow.
And they mentioned one party, one nation.
One nation?
Yep.
Wow.
So Pauline and I were very, very proud. So what I'm saying is we know that the efforts that the Digital Transformation Agency in this country have made electronically have all failed. These people can't pull it off. They cannot pull it off. That's the first thing. They will cause enormous damage and chaos in trying to do so. It's also important to understand that their aims are control and wealth transfer.
Yes.
Always beneath control there is
fear.
They are shit scared of the people. They are terrified of the people. Well, the wonderful news is that if you look at the last Davos retreat, there were good reporters two from Australia, at least one from Canada, other countries, who were just making a mockery of it.
Yes.
Even the mouthpiece media, Efrat, were making a mockery of these monkeys. John Kerry made a fool of himself. Al Gore made a fool of himself. These people are now going into global boiling, and people are just laughing at them.
You know what their theme for this year is? Rebuilding trust, because they know that there is no trust. Right. It tells you everything.
So what I'm saying is we are getting through. The people are starting to come back. We just got to get more people awake. So whoever's watching this, please share it. Please do share more of your work and your work. Waking up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Where can people follow you and keep up to date with your work?
On Instagram, I'm Senator Malcolm Roberts. Mm-hmm. On Facebook, search Senator Malcolm Roberts. Twitter, X, I'm M Roberts 2019, I think. Mm-hmm. But you'll find me. Mm-hmm. And I've got a website, which is Malcolm Roberts QLD for Queensland, malcolmrobertsqld.com.au.
Fantastic. So I will put the links in the show notes for this episode. And I want to give you, we'll give you a hug later, but this was really fantastic for me because I feel very privileged to be able to travel and meet like-minded people that speak, in the same level. Doesn't matter where we're from, what the background is, which nationality, which religion, it doesn't matter. In the end of the day, as you said, it's freedom, it's love. It's what unites us as human beings, and just meeting someone that is serving humanity like you, serving the people of Australia, of Queensland, of the world, the way you do, is very, very unusual. So I thank you on behalf of your constituents, but also on behalf of people from around the world. That was a fantastic conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Efrat.
Thanks.